Hello everyone, welcome along again, back to my channel. Peter Rising here, Microsoft MVP, with another video on all things Microsoft 365. We are back to our series of learning Microsoft 365 and Azure Active Directory from the very beginning. We're following along the new Microsoft MS102 learning guide for the new certification, currently in beta, but it's a good practice to follow along with an exam guide if you're learning Microsoft 365. You don't have to be taking the exam though, you might just be wanting to learn something new. So we've got lots of options for you in looking at these videos. There's lots of ways you can consume them and hopefully you'll get something out of them either way. Today we're moving on to a new section. We finished the first section in our look at Microsoft 365, and we're going to start talking all about users now and creating and managing and deleting users. There's lots of exciting stuff to come. Stay tuned. Now we move to the second section of deploying and managing a Microsoft 365 tenant, which is all about managing users and groups. And in this section, we are going to go through creating and managing users, creating and managing guest users, creating and managing contacts, and creating and managing groups, including Microsoft 365 groups. There is a few different types of group types in M365, and we'll go through those. We'll also look at managing and monitoring Microsoft 365 license allocations. Very, very important to keep a handle on those licensing allocations. And finally, we'll look at performing bulk user management, including using PowerShell. Okay, so let's dive in. First, we're going to look at managing users, creating and managing users, in fact. And there are a few places that you can do this within Microsoft 365 or Azure Active Directory. And I'm sure as you go along and you become comfortable with M365, you'll find your own ways of doing things. Find what works best for you would be a piece of advice that I would have. Now, from the early days of using Microsoft 365, I've always gravitated towards using the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. For me, this is the easiest place to configure these user objects, but you don't have to do it from here. You can also use the Microsoft Entra Admin Center, Entra being the umbrella term for all things identity within Microsoft 365. So we can go into the Azure AD section here, into users and all users, and we can see our users from in here as well. Now you get a very similar view from the Azure portal at portal.azure.com, and you can go into Azure Active Directory and you can manage your users right from here as well. And you'll notice that it's a very, very similar view to what you see in the Entra Admin Center. In fact, it's near enough identical. If we switch back to that, it's just in a more compressed space, really, because weirdly at the moment, and anyone who's watching, tell me if I've missed something obvious, I can't see a way of collapsing this sidebar on the Entra Admin Center at the moment, which I do find quite annoying, I have to admit. Okay, so let's go back to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, and I'm going to create a new user right from here. We can see at the moment we have a few users in here already. We've got myself, I am the global administrator here. We've got Alfred, this was the name of my grandfather in case you're curious who Alfred Olcott was. And eagle-eyed fans of the TV show Star Trek Picard will know the names Annika Hansen and Liam Shaw. Great show, I suggest you watch it. But we're going to go ahead and we are going to add a user here. So let's go ahead and click on Add User. And it's a very straightforward process. We go through a wizard and it's very, very simple and easy to do. So let's pick another Star Trek character. Let's, for example, select William Riker. So we will add William Riker in as a user. It populates the display name for me. And under username, I can put in what I want here actually, but I will stick with the convention of William.Riker, first name dot last name. A bit of advice I would have for you here. Across your organization, try and keep your username consistent. Don't make it a mix. Decide if you're going to go first name dot last name, or first initial surname, or first name surname initial. I think that first name last name tends to work best. Now here, you can choose which domain you are going to set as the username. And if we click the drop down, well, we should be able to click the drop down, but I've only got the one custom domain added to this Microsoft 365 tenant, which you might remember in our first video, or one of our first videos, we added that in, peterrising.m365.com. Now that is a custom domain, and the tenant domain name, you might remember, is peterrisingtech.onmicrosoft.com. Now this may be a glitch, but you can normally select that from here. But any of the domains that you have in your tenant, you would be able to click on that drop down and see them. Okay, so that's the username. And that is going to be what the username is. It's going to be firstname.lastname at domainname.com. Next, we move to the password settings. And we have a choice here. We can automatically create the password, or we can type one in. If we type one in, then we have some options here to require the user to change their password when they first sign in. And we can also send them a password in an email upon completion. Usually the easiest way I tend to find is to set them an automatic password to begin with. It all depends. As with anything in IT, it depends. But let's go with the automatically create a password. And what we'll do is we'll select the option to require them to change the password when they first sign in. And we will also send the password in an email upon completion. So you could send this. Imagine you have a new starter, you could potentially send this email to their personal email address before they start, in readiness for them starting their role. Or you could send it to their manager, for example. And this doesn't have to be an address within your tenant. It can be external as well if you wish. So we click on Next. Now we select the location of the user. You can assign a geographic region to the user here. I'm not quite sure what's going on with the display here. It seems to be a bit glitchy, but perhaps it's perhaps a bit of a bug on the Microsoft end. But you should be able to usually select from different countries around the world. But fortunately, I want to leave this as United Kingdom, so we will do so. Now we can choose which license we want to assign to the user here as well. I only have one license in my tenant at the moment. I have a subscription for Microsoft 365 Business Premium, and I have a trial, which is giving me 25 licenses available. Now you can create the user without a product license, which is not recommended. Really, you would only not assign a license to a user object if it's going to be an administrator-only account of some description, like a global admin, who is not going to be using that account as their everyday account. So when you're creating everyday users, you would always want to assign them a license. Okay. Now what we can do here is we can get granular within that license selection of which apps we want to include for them. So we can expand that, and we can choose within the Microsoft Business Premium license what we do and don't want to give them. So we certainly want to give them Azure Active Directory. We want to give them most of these things, quite frankly, but you can get granular. You can decide what you do and don't want them to have. So, for example, you might not be ready to roll out Microsoft bookings to your organization just yet. So you could turn that off. But this just goes to illustrate just what you do get with Microsoft 365 Business Premium. You get a ton of great stuff. It really is great value for money for those smaller organizations who have up to 300 users. Tons of stuff included in here, as you can see. We can click on Next. Now here we can set some optional settings. Now, it may be that you are setting up a user object which needs administrative access. And you can assign that right from here. So your typical everyday user is not going to have any sort of admin access. But you can select the roles from here. And you can choose between Exchange Administrator, Global Admin, which is the top level, Global Reader, Help Desk Admin, and more. And I will say, do be careful with assigning these roles to people. Only give them to people who need them. And ideally, don't assign them permanently. Now, in the case of Microsoft 365 Business Premium, you'd have to assign them this way, because with Business Premium, you are not going to be able to take advantage of a feature called Privileged Information Management, or PIM, which is an advanced feature included in the E5 licensing plans. Now, that enables just-in-time access to these roles, where the user can request access to the roles for only as long as they need them. Here, assigning them this way, we would be assigning standing privileges, which is very, very risky. So be aware of that risk. But this is a normal user. We're not going to give them admin access. Okay, and we can show those other roles by category as well. See where they fit into the scheme of things. So there we go. We can look at profile information here as well. We can set all this now while we set up the user object. You don't have to do it now though. You could go on and do it later. But I would advise either way to complete this information. There are benefits to having job title, department, and all these locations put in, as you'll see where these become applicable in later videos, where we can set up things by field. So lots of reasons to populate this information as much as you can. But you can come back and do that later on when the user is created. And this concludes creating the user. We've added our user. We can review our settings that we have created. We can see our display name and username. Our password will be auto-generated and sent to this email address. We have our location and licenses selected, and our roles and our profile info. Let's finish adding the user. And it goes ahead. Fantastic. Now, what you can even do here is you can save these user settings as a template. So you can create more users based on the same template settings that you have created. So what we could do here is we could just put in standard employee, if there is such a thing. Probably a very, very poor example, but just to give you an idea of how to set up the template. So add a description, not crucial. It's not got a little red star next to it, but always put in a description. So I will just put in most users will have this template. Okay, and we can choose whether we want to make this template available to other admins who manage users. And if you want to unpublish a template, all you have to do is delete it. You can't change a template to private after it's published. So let's do that. Let's save that as a template. And there we go. Fantastic. We've got a template. If we want, we can move to add another user right from here, but we're happy with that. We're good. We've created our user. And there he is right away. There is William Riker. I should have given him a middle initial, actually. I should have put the T in. So cool stuff. We can go into William Riker's user object now, and let's see what sort of things we can do. Now, it may be that William Riker is having some problems signing in. His password is not enabling to get access. He can't reset his password. We can easily do that right from here. We can click on reset password as an administrator, and we can go through that process again. We can choose to auto create that password, require them to change it. We can go back to all those options that we had in the previous section, and then we can reset the password. So that is really cool. If for some reason William Riker doesn't work out, he's started with the organization, and on day 2 his manager realizes, actually, this guy is not a good fit for our organization. We can block sign in and prevent him from getting access immediately to the organization. And we can go ahead and delete his user object as well. Now, the impact of deleting a user object is that the user will be moved to the deleted users section of users, where it will remain for 30 days. We'll take a look at that in a moment or two, though. What else have we got in here, though? Let's move down the account settings. We can see our username and email. We can see the aliases that we have. Now, here we go. It's showing us that we have our peterrisingtech.onmicrosoft.com as an alias email address. And we can manage our username and email settings from here. And if we do so, if we click on that, we can add more aliases in. It might be that we want W.T. Riker at peterrisingm365.com. There we go. This time it's showing the other domain option as well. That must have been a glitch on that previous screen. But we can add that in, and we can save our changes. We can put in aliases and make the primary whichever one William Riker prefers to have. There we go. We can go back, and we can also manage from here any groups that our user should have access to. Now, if we have any groups created, which I don't think we do at the moment, we can assign memberships to them. We can search for a group, or there are some built-in groups here that we have, such as all company and all users. We do have some groups, though. We have some groups that are based on teams, Microsoft teams, which have been created, such as the inventively named new team, a secret plans team, which is a private team, and the Titan crew reports team. We've also got an adoption management team. So we can add them to these teams right here. Let's go ahead and add William Riker to that Titan crew reports, and we can add that. You can add multiple in at once, though. So that's done now. That is saved there. Cool stuff. We can choose to go back and add admin roles to this user here if we want to. Nice and simple. So that's something you can do at any time, but a reminder, do be careful about allocating those. Think carefully about who needs them and for how long. Now, what we can do here as well is we can assign the manager of this person in this area. So if we click on Add Manager, we can choose who this person's manager is going to be. And I think his manager is going to be Liam Shaw. So we'll set Liam Shaw as William Riker's manager. And what that's going to do, if you set a manager role for any user in Microsoft 365, it's going to build out a lovely organization chart, which is just fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. You can see a really nice org chart of who reports to who is in which team, and it's a nice, simple way of doing that. So when you're creating your users, do populate that field. Do add the manager field. Has that populated? Yeah, it has. It has indeed. I must have clicked save without realizing it. So then we can look at our contact information here. We can edit that contact information by clicking on Manage Contact Information. And we can put some more details in here. We can put in the title of William T. Riker. We can call him Acting Captain. You Trekkies out there will get a real kick out of this, I have no doubt. Department, we can put in department as command. Office, we can put, where's his office? His office is on Nepenthe, which is a planet. We can put in his office phone. We can put in his fax number if anyone still has a fax. His mobile phone, his street address, city, state or province, zip or postal code, and country or region. We can save all those changes. And the more detail you have in here, the better. Okay, so that's it. We've edited some stuff there. We've got our user completed. Let's click to close that now, and that's awesome. But how does that look in the other portals? Let's move over to the Entra portal. And in the Entra portal, which is exactly the same visual as the Azure portal, as we saw earlier, let's give that a refresh. And there we go. We've got William Riker added in. Nice and simple. Very, very cool. Now, you get a few more columns here, so some differences here. We can see what type of user this is, whether it's a member or a guest, as we'll get to guest users as we go further down. On-premises synchronization. Now, this is something that we'll come to when we hit the identity section of this video series. But in short, to give you an idea of what this means, right now we are using Microsoft 365 in its native identity methodology, which is cloud only. We are managing everything from here. But the majority of organizations are very likely not going to be operating in that way, because most sort of mid to large size organizations that have been operating for 20 plus years with technology, they're very, very likely going to have a standing investment and reliance on on-premises technology. They're very, very likely to have on-premises Active Directory with some legacy applications still involved. So they're going to have the need to synchronize their on-premises Active Directory with Azure Active Directory. And that is something we will demonstrate in a future video. And when that happens, the source of authority for any users will always be on-premises Active Directory. And you synchronize on-premises Active Directory to Azure Active Directory. And all the users from on-premises will be seen here. And they will be shown as the user type of synced from local AD. So that's something we'll get to, though, but worth mentioning here right now. Fantastic stuff. If we go into our user here, William Riker, we can see a lot of details here, much more than we can see in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. We can get a few more details. We can get his object ID GUID, for example. We can get last sign-in time. We can get B2B collaboration. We can convert this user object to an external user. And that is something we will look at as we go forward as well. We will take a look at guest users and how they all work too. So we can go right through and see activity for William Riker in the audit logs. We can see what's been happening here in relation to this user. We can see the user was added, updated, added to a group. The manager was set. And we'll be able to see login activity as well, and things like the sign-in logs. He hasn't signed in yet, so we shouldn't see anything there. We can diagnose and solve problems as well. And we can manage some attributes here. Custom security attributes, which is a preview feature. We can look at the assigned roles that this user has, so we could add the assignments to privilege roles from here, so those admin roles. We could assign the user to an administrative user from here as well, to an administrative unit, I should say, rather. And an administrative unit is where you will segment administrative roles between, say, geographical locations, so you can segregate those groups of administrators to certain regions, like US versus UK or France or Germany, etc., and segment those responsibilities. We can manage the groups that the user is a member of, and we can see here that in the admin center, the M365 Admin Center, we added the user to the Titan Crew Reports groups. We can look at the applications that the user has assigned to them. We can see the licenses here. So we have that Microsoft 365 Business Premium, and that has been directly assigned as opposed to assigned via group-based licensing, which is something we will look at in this section of videos. We can see the devices that the user is using. We can see the name of the device, whether it's enabled, what the OS is, the version, the join type, whether it's Azure AD joined or hybrid Azure AD joined. We can see mobile device management information, whether the device is compliant, whether it's registered, and some activity details as well. Azure role assignments. Now, there are further roles within Azure, which we can assign here, and we can select a subscription. This is not something that we can do right now because we have no Azure subscription enabled on this tenant. And we can see authentication methods here as well. What authentication methods does this user have available for when they sign into Azure AD? And we can set phone numbers and email addresses and alternative emails and so on and so forth. Fantastic stuff. So there we go. So under users, we can see all users, we can see deleted users, and we can see user settings as well. Let's take a little look into user settings. Let's have a very, very quick look at this, because I don't want to duplicate effort. We'll very likely to get to some of these sections in some later videos. But in user settings, we can see what users can do in relation to things like enterprise applications. We can manage how end users launch and view their applications. So we can go into that and decide whether users can add gallery apps to the My App section, whether users can only see Office 365 apps in the O365 portal, and you can select up to 3 different applications for your end users so they can access third-party resources on their first day of work. So that is pretty cool. If we go back in, and that's moved down actually into the applications, enterprise applications section of the Entra portal. So we've jumped. So watch out for that. Sometimes if you click on these links, it'll take you elsewhere in portals. We go back to user settings. Can users register applications? Yes or no? By default, it's yes. Do be careful of these sort of things though. Consider, do you want your users actually being able to do that? Probably no would be my view as a security focused individual. Tenant creation. Do we want to restrict non-admin users from creating tenants? I would say absolutely yes. An example of what that relates to, a good one would be Power BI. It was possible some years ago. I don't know if it still is, but users could use their Azure AD credentials to sign up for a Power BI trial, and doing that would actually register a tenant for them, and that caught out a number of organizations. So that's probably the sort of thing that is relating to. And again, I would certainly have that as yes. We don't want non-admin users ever creating tenants. Do you want to connect to LinkedIn? Do you want to allow your users to be able to link their work or school account with LinkedIn? So that's on by default. Sure, keep the user signed in. Are they going to get that prompt, the option to remain signed in, yes or no? And we can manage some external user collaboration settings from here as well. So if we go into that, we can choose what guest user access is like, and guest invite settings and all that sort of thing. But I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit there. Let's go back to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, and we've looked at creating a user. Now you will see that there are some other tabs up here on the top as well. So we've got users, we've got teams, we've got subscriptions, we've got learn as well. So, and you can toggle between them and see what you have there quite easily, just as we're noticing that. But we'll go back to users, and where we are right now is in active users, but we also have 3 more sections here. We've got contacts, and contacts are people outside of your organization that you'd like everyone to be able to find. So anyone listed here can be found in Outlook under people in Microsoft 365. So you could add a contact as an external address. So you could put the first name, the last name, and the display name, the email address. So this is very likely going to be like a Gmail address or someone from an external organization, a partner organization or a supplier. And you have the option there to hide that from the organization's global address list as well if you want to. You can put in full profile information there, and you can also put in a mail tip. Now, mail tips are really useful for your users in that when they are putting in that address, when they select that, they'll get a little tip pops up which shows them what this contact is all about. So that can be anything you want. It can give them guidance on who is this person, why are they there. It's just a little explanatory mail tip. So you can add a contact there quite easily. You can add multiple contacts, and this is really cool. You can download CSV files with headers only, or headers and some sample contact information. And you can use these CSV files to upload and populate your multiple contacts and add in lots at once. Very, very, very simple indeed, but very powerful, and a great way to add in some contacts nice and quickly. Let's go back to our users. So that's contacts. Now we also have something called guest users, and a guest user is an external user who you are going to invite to your Microsoft 365 tenant. So you can add a guest user, and this is going to take you into the Azure portal. Now what you can do here is you can create a guest user, a new user in your organization. Or you can invite a user. Now, actually what this is doing here, it's creating a user will create a standard user. But inviting a user is to invite a guest user into the organization. So here, what we could do is we could put in, let's say, Peter Rising. And we could put in an email address of, let's have a wee think, Peter.Rising, 1972, giving away my year of birth there, at gmail.com. If you get any ideas about hacking that account, I do have protection on that, so don't get any bright ideas. I've done it now, haven't I? Okay, first name, last name. Okay, here we go. Put in my first name and my last name. And I can put in a personal message here. So, welcome to my tenant. I can choose what groups and roles this user is going to have. So I can select groups. So let's do that. Let's go in and make this user have the ability to get access to the adoption management group, or that's a team in actual fact. So do I want to block the sign-in? Not immediately, or I might want to do it for a time. This might be set up in advance. The usage location, let's scroll down and select my, it's very sensitive this, so let's see if I can get down to the use and select United Kingdom, because that's where I live. And I can populate some job info fields here as well. I can even put a manager in, even though it's an external user. So there we go. I can send an invite to an external user. And what you will find is, there we go, that's been generated. If we go back to guest users and do a refresh, you're not going to see that there immediately. You do in fact see it there immediately after a refresh. There it is. So that is there, but the invitation has not yet been redeemed. The user has to redeem the invitation and then get access. So we can have a look at that a little bit later, but I just wanted to demonstrate that process for you. Okay, so there we go. Let's go back to, there's one more section in here, which is deleted users. And we will come back to guest users later, just to reassure you, not necessarily in this video, but in this series of videos, we may look at that in a bit more detail. Deleted users is where you will see any deleted users. Now, let's go ahead and delete one and see what the behavior is. Let's go and do just that. So we're going to go into active users, and now in this active users list, you can actually see that there are two Peter Risings in here now. I have my tenant Peter Rising object, and I have my guest Peter Rising object as well. And it's giving the username as this Gmail represented username, and it is set as unlicensed as well. Now, you don't have to assign the guest user a license. I will put links into the description of this video on how guest users are licensed. Now, it's recently changed. It used to be that you could have 5 guest users per one license that you have. It's slightly different now, and I can't quite recall the distinction that has changed, but I'll put details for that in the description. But just to illustrate that the guest user is there. But let's go ahead and delete a user. We decided we don't want William Riker in this organization. We're going to get rid of him. So let's do that. So we'll click on him, and we're going to go delete user. Okay. So the really cool thing here, when you're deleting a user, you can restore deleted users and their data for up to 30 days after you delete them. On their connected devices will be removed, as well as email aliases, mailbox delegate permissions, and you can give another user access to OneDrive files for 30 days after the user is deleted, and you can give another user access to the email account as well. So there's some choices here that you can apply. Why some of these are grayed out? Well, there's no mailbox delegate permissions. Oh yeah, that makes sense. We haven't even logged William Riker in yet. Had we logged him in, he would have had a OneDrive, and this one would have been available to us, and we would have been able to give another user access to their OneDrive. But he does have a mailbox provisioned. So what we can do here is we can remove the email aliases. We can give another user access to William Riker's email, and we can click on here and we can go through that. So we can go and give that. Let's give that to Annika Hansen, and Annika can view William Riker's emails for the duration. We can use the current display name for the shared mailbox, so we can create a new display name, and this is how it will appear in Annika Hansen's Outlook. So you can choose how you want that to appear to the delegate. You can turn on the automatic replies for the object you're deleting as well. So you can choose to send automatic replies, and you can customize this pre-populated message here if you wish to. And you can reply automatically to only people from inside your organization or people inside and outside the organization. And you can even choose to have a different message for inside and outside. So let's go on next. And then we can delete the email aliases as well. So emails sent to the aliases that we can see here will be delivered to the shared mailbox. If you no longer want that to happen, or you only want to use any of these aliases in the next 30 days, then you can delete one or more aliases. So we can delete one of them here as an example, delete that WT one that we put in. Let's go next. And we can transfer ownership and assign and convert. So that is really cool. It's going to convert that to a shared mailbox for that period of 30 days, and it's going to unassign licenses. It's going to free up the license. Licenses unassigned, Microsoft 365 Business Premium, email aliases removed, convert it to a shared mailbox, and access granted to Annika Hansen, brackets call me 7, another Star Trek joke. And automatic replies have been turned on for the senders inside and outside of your organization. Cool beans indeed. So we close out of that, and if we give that a little refresh now, we get William Riker still represented here, but he's now unlicensed. Okay, fantastic. Does he appear in the deleted users? He does not as yet. So we've deleted him, but we've assigned ownership for 30 days to Annika Hansen. So after that, the user will appear in the deleted users. Now, let's come at that from a different perspective. Let's show you a slightly different scenario. Let's go ahead and delete Liam Shaw. So we'll click on Liam, and we'll go delete user. Okay. And in this case, we're not going to give any access whatsoever to anyone else. So we'll just simply click delete user, and it's unassigning the licenses, deleting the user account, and boom, we're done. So now, if we give this a refresh, yep, we can see that Liam is gone. Okay, let's move down to the deleted users once again. We can see Liam in here. He's going to remain in here for a period of 30 days. Now, once he's gone, he's gone. Nothing you can do to get that back unless you're using a third-party backup and restore tool of some description. But that is not something that is baked into Microsoft 365. What we can do, though, for that period of 30 days, if we've made a mistake, and if we catch it on time, we can highlight him and we can restore the user object. We can put him back. And there's two things we can do here. We can auto-generate his password, or you can create the password yourself again. So we'll just auto-generate it. And then we'll click on restore, and we're going to ask him to reset his password on the next login. So as we've auto-generated it, it tells us what the password is here. You can send that in an email if you wish to. So you can choose who you want to send that to, and then you can close that. And then there you go. He's gone from the deleted users. Nice and simple indeed. And if we go back to active users, there he is back right away. Now, what you will notice is that it does not reassign the license automatically. So we're going to have to go back in and reassign Liam Shaw a license. So click on Add License, assign his license. Let's just turn on all the features because let's face it, wouldn't want to deny Captain Shaw anything because he's a bit scary, but he's cool, really. There you go. Even got his picture. And there we go. We've got Liam Shaw back where he belongs. He's back as an active user and he's good to go. Fantastic stuff. And that's going to about do it for today, folks. But I hear you ask, what about PowerShell? What about creating users in PowerShell, deleting users in PowerShell? Don't worry, that's all going to come. We're going to do lots more with users yet and groups as well. We haven't even started. There's so much good content to come, and we are going to make sure to cover it all with you in this series. So stay tuned. Okay, let's finish this one up. Let's take this one home. Thank you so much, as always, for your support. I really do appreciate it, and I do not take it for granted. Please keep sharing the channel with your friends. Spread the word. Tell them to come here to learn Microsoft 365 alongside us. Find some study buddies, and it's fun to learn together always. Please ask me any questions in the comments. Leave me your reactions and feedback, and ask me if you want me to cover something that I've not covered. I'm always open to suggestions for new videos. Absolutely no problem at all. Please hit that subscribe button. Subscribers make all the difference to this channel. It's going to help us to grow, reach a wider audience, and make even more great content for you. And if you don't want to miss a video, hit that notifications bell. Ring that bell, and you will never miss a video from me. So until next time, I've enjoyed your company as ever. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.